Imagine standing in the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia over 3,000 years ago. Archaeologists are carefully brushing away layers of sand, revealing something that shouldn't exist. Carved into massive stone panels, they find figures that aren't quite human holding two mysterious objects. In one hand, a pine cone-shaped artifact. In the other, something that looks exactly like a modern handbag. But here's what will blow your mind. This exact same symbol appears on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean in ancient Mexico, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. How is this possible? What we're about to discover will challenge everything mainstream archaeology tells us about isolated ancient civilizations. Picture this scene with me. The year is 1845. British archaeologist Austen Henry Layard is excavating the Palace of Nimrud in modern-day Iraq. As workers remove centuries of desert sand, enormous alabaster panels emerge from the earth, towering over 9 feet tall. Carved into these panels are figures known as Apkallu, divine beings with eagle heads and magnificent feathered wings. Ancient Sumerian texts describe these beings as survivors of the Great Flood who brought the gifts of civilization to primitive humanity. They taught writing, agriculture, laws, and architecture. But the most intriguing detail is what they're holding. Every single figure carries a rigid square-shaped container with a curved handle. Archaeologists called it a bucket, claiming it held sacred water for purification rituals. Case closed, right? Not even close. Here's where the mystery explodes into something global. As explorers excavated ruins around the world, they kept finding the same handbag symbol. Not similar designs, but identical representations. Same curved handle, same rigid rectangular shape, same divine context. Let's travel 12,000 years back to Gobekli Tepe in Turkey, the oldest known temple complex on Earth. This site shouldn't exist according to mainstream archaeology because it was built before agriculture, before pottery, before metalworking, before everything we thought was necessary for civilization. Yet here stand massive carved pillars weighing up to 20 tons, arranged in precise circles, decorated with detailed animal reliefs. And carved into these impossible pillars? The handbag symbol held by human-like figures with supernatural features. Now let's jump across the Atlantic Ocean to La Venta, Mexico, home of the ancient Olmec civilization. On a massive stone stela, archaeologists discovered a figure descending from the sky, surrounded by symbols of clouds and celestial movement. The feathered serpent deity wraps around the scene. And there in the figure's hand, held with obvious importance, is the same handbag. The exact same design as Mesopotamia, exact same as Gobekli Tepe, separated by an entire ocean and thousands of years. Traditional archaeologists call this cultural parallelism, claiming different societies independently invented the same symbol by pure coincidence. But you know, that explanation doesn't really hold water. Think about it logically for a moment. Ancient cultures around the world developed vastly different symbols, mythologies, and cosmological structures. They lived in geographic isolation, faced completely different ecosystems, used different technologies, spoke different languages, and followed unique calendars and ways of life. So, why do we find this one specific, unusual symbol appearing in prehistoric Middle East, Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia, Anatolia, ancient India, Egypt, New Zealand, and even Easter Island? This isn't a trivial detail. This is a pattern. And patterns in science are exactly the kind of thing that should make us rethink everything. Let's examine what connects all these appearances. In every single culture, the handbag isn't carried by ordinary humans. It's held by gods, culture bearers, and bringers of knowledge. In Mesopotamia, the god Enki appears holding the handbag, surrounded by symbols of wisdom, primordial waters, and creation. Ancient texts say he carried the ME, divine decrees that contain the fundamental attributes of civilization, including kingship, craftsmanship, mathematics, laws, and music. In Mexico, the feathered serpent deity comes from the sky to teach agriculture, astronomy, writing, mathematics, and engineering. The handbag is firmly grasped as a precious artifact. In Polynesia, the Maori people tell stories of the god Tane, who ascended to the highest heaven and returned to earth bringing 3 sacred baskets. What was inside these baskets? All divine knowledge and wisdom, which he then delivered to humanity. Another continent, another culture, another story, but the central theme remains identical. Here's the question that mainstream archaeology refuses to answer adequately. If ancient peoples had no contact across oceans, how did they all represent divine knowledge using the exact same unusual, rigid handbag design? The probability of multiple civilizations separated by oceans and millennia independently inventing precisely the same symbol for precisely the same concept of divine knowledge is essentially 0. This wasn't coincidence. This was a message. But a message about what? What was so important that it needed to be shown to all of humanity? Let's explore the theories that could explain this impossible artifact. Theory 1 suggests the handbag contained seeds, the literal seeds of civilization. This idea, fits perfectly with legends of gods bringing knowledge in containers. Right after the Ice Age ended, around the time Gobekli Tepe was built, something incredible happened. Agriculture didn't evolve slowly. It exploded almost simultaneously in disconnected parts of the world. The Fertile Crescent, the Indus Valley, China, and Mesoamerica all developed farming at roughly the same time. Was this just an accident, or were seeds and advanced cultivation knowledge delivered in those handbags? Could this have been a technological container with climate control, designed to restart civilization after a global catastrophe? Theory 2 proposes something even more radical. What if the handbag wasn't a container, but a device? Maybe even a portable energy source. Everyone wonders how ancient wonders were built. How were multi-ton pyramid blocks lifted? How were the stones of Pumapunku in Bolivia cut with laser precision? How were colossal statues moved across miles of swampland? Traditional history says copper chisels, wooden rollers, and lots of manual labor. But honestly, real-world engineers say that's impossible with the time frames and resources available. What if the handbag was the answer? What if it was an energy generator, powering advanced tools that could cut stone with sound frequencies or anti-gravity technology, allowing 50-ton blocks to float like feathers? This would explain why gods are always depicted holding it. It wasn't a symbol of their power, it was their power. Theory 3 ventures into the most controversial territory. What if the handbag contained a genetic toolkit? Look closely at the carvings. The Upkalu are touching sacred trees, but in other representations, they're performing this same act on the king himself. Traditional scholars say they're purifying the king, but what if purifying is the wrong translation? What if they were actually upgrading the king? What if the handbag held genetic engineering tools, and the pine cone was an application device, like an advanced syringe used to manipulate human DNA itself? This would explain the sudden explosive leap in human intelligence, the great cognitive jump that scientists still can't adequately explain. What if the gods didn't just teach humanity, but literally created modern humanity as we know it? The handbag would be a DNA database, the cone the tool to write the code. But here's the theory that really breaks everything wide open. What if the handbag wasn't an instrument within our world, but a device that creates our world? What if it was a fragment of reality's source code, a portable module containing the fundamental parameters of local physics? Think about it. Our universe depends on extremely specific values: gravitational force intensity, particle masses, cosmological constant, speed of light, strong and weak nuclear forces, electromagnetic balance, quantum vacuum density. Change any of these values even slightly, and the universe instantly collapses. No stars, no atoms, no chemistry, no stable time, no life. It's like trying to run a game without a configuration file. It crashes, fails, won't load. Now imagine these values are maintained by an external instrument, an object designed to stabilize the local simulation. What if this object was portable? What if ancient civilizations saw it? What if it was carried by beings who administered the matrix of reality itself? It makes perfect sense that our ancestors couldn't describe it properly. They didn't understand what they were seeing. They had no technical vocabulary, no physics, no algorithms, no sufficient mathematics. So they represented it as a handbag, because that was the closest thing the human mind could comprehend. The sacred tree that appears alongside the handbag in so many carvings might not be a tree at all. It could be a diagram, a visual representation of branching code pathways, algorithms, data structures, the architecture of reality itself. The Apkallu weren't watering a plant, they were updating the system. They were administrators, not of temples or farms, but of existence itself. This sounds insane until you realize that the concept of reality as a maintained system appears in indigenous traditions, shamanic beliefs, Vedic texts, Greek philosophy, Egyptian myths, and even cutting-edge theoretical physics. They're all describing the same thing with different words. Here's what we know for certain. The handbag symbol appears at the dawn of civilization, 12,000 years ago. It shows up in the cradle of civilization in Mesopotamia. It crosses the ocean to appear in Mexico. It spreads to the Pacific. The story behind it, a container of divine knowledge, appears everywhere. Conventional archaeology has no good answer. They say it's all enormous coincidence. But this isn't a simple basket. This is a specific, rigid, unusual design. The odds are astronomical. So, if it's not coincidence, what is it? Could there have been an advanced civilization before the end of the last ice age that transmitted knowledge to human groups around the world? This is the hypothesis mainstream archaeologists hate. They won't discuss it, won't research it, and sometimes won't even allow it to be studied. But they can't explain Gobekli Tepe. They can't explain the handbags. They can't explain the global coincidences. The same rigid square handbag appearing in ancient Iraq and ancient Mexico is so visually striking, it's impossible to ignore. Two completely different cultures, separated by a giant ocean and thousands of years with no contact, yet there it is, the same unique symbol. What's even crazier is this pattern continues. In Toltec civilization, massive warrior figures called the Atlanteans of Tula are also depicted holding rigid box-like objects. The theme of a container of power persists. We see echoes in ancient Egypt, where hieroglyphs show intriguing handbag-like forms. Consider the Ankh, the key of life, always held by Egyptian gods. It has an upper handle and lower base. What if the Ankh is a stylized, two-dimensional version of the same device? A key, a tool, a source of power. Fellow explorers, we've journeyed through impossible archaeology today. We've seen evidence that challenges every assumption about isolated ancient cultures. The handbag of the gods appears across continents, across millennia, always in the hands of divine knowledge bringers. Whether it held seeds, energy, genetic tools, consciousness-altering technology, or reality manipulation devices, we may never know with absolute certainty. But one thing is clear. Our ancestors were trying to tell us something crucial. They carved it in stone, erected it in temples, and passed down the stories through generations. What do you think the handbag really was? Do you believe in advanced prehistoric civilizations? Could ancient peoples have possessed technologies we've lost? Share your theories in the comments below. Join us next time as we continue uncovering the treasures that time forgot and the secrets that changed the world forever.